Thank you so much indeed for that introduction and for reminding me how many different jobs I've had in this government, and that was just in the last year alone. On the evening of the 6th of October, millions of families across Israel went to sleep expecting to spend the next day celebrating Simchat Torah. They'd be with their loved ones, but they were instead woken about 6:30 by the sound of air raid sirens and by disruption from thousands of rockets. And many of them looked outside of their homes to see Hamas terrorists coming up the street. And they hid. And some were able to get away from the terrorists, but others weren't so fortunate. And their tragic stories, many of which you've heard, must be told, because it's important that we know, we understand, and we remember what happened to them. But what I want to talk about this evening is not what happened on the 7th of October, but what, in fact, is happening now. Because Jewish people know that Israel is under constant attack from people who say that, despite what happened with those terrorists, despite the fact that their acts were heinous and depraved and vicious and inhuman, despite the fact that they brutally murdered men, women and children, and sorry, the dinner's about to be served, but decapitated some of those bodies and filmed it as well. Despite all of that, some people say that Israel should not go after them. That somehow going after Hamas in their bunkers, in their tunnels, is somehow against international humanitarian law. I do not think that is true. The conflict can only really end if Hamas surrender or they're defeated. It's within their power to help bring this to an end very quickly. They could give up the 242 hostages that they took. They could release those hostages. They could stop firing weapons into Israel. But those who say and call for a ceasefire, I say to those people, we already had one. On the 6th of October, there was no need for Israel to be in Gaza, rooting out terrorists from their dens and bunkers. Israel was going about its business. Kids were at the music festival. Families, as I say, were getting ready to celebrate Simchat Torah. That ceasefire was well and truly broken by that murderous rampage that I described on the 7th. And now, Israel does not just have a right to go after those murderers, they have a duty to go after them. Just imagine for a moment if those terrorist activities had happened on the streets of Britain. 1,400 people murdered, thousands more injured, a population traumatized. Would we heed calls from people saying to us, no matter that you know where these terrorists have gone, will you please leave them alone, have a ceasefire and call it today? No, we would not, and it would. Because, quite obviously, if Israel did that, then in the days, or the weeks, or the months, or the years ahead, they would be back again to murder more Israelis. Now, I make this point because I want to also cover something else which I think is very important. Israel are not terrorists like Hamas. Israel is a democratic state with elections, with outcomes we may or may not like, but hey, well, that's what happens in elections, right? You don't always get the outcome you want. But the fact that the country is a democracy, that is the thing that really matters. It really matters. And so for all those people who somehow try to equate what Hamas, a terrorist organization, does with what Israel, a democratic state, does, have just got the wrong end of the moral compass. In Britain, I know that, sadly, this conflict, has woken up some underlying evils the Jewish community have been warned about and concerned about in the past. And there's been an explosion of anti-Jewish hate in recent weeks, which has been appalling to see. And I know how deeply that's been felt by everybody in this room, Jews throughout the country. And I know this not just because I've read about it, not because I've come to dinners like this and spoken about it, but because I feel it from my own family and friends. But I want you to know two things. First, you have a government in this country who absolutely understands Israel's right to defend herself. We stand solidly by the state of Israel in having the right to do those things. And you're not just hearing it from me tonight because I happen to be Jewish, in fact, the most senior Jew in this government. You're hearing it because my colleagues around the cabinet table say it, and they say it with as much and even more passion than I'm displaying this evening. We are lucky to have a government who stands up for the Jewish people. We saw it when our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, spent that first day in, I think it was Kinross Synagogue. You've seen it with money which has gone to support CST in providing that security. The second thing I was going to say is, please, and I know it's difficult, let us not allow terrorists to do what terrorists do. Terrorize. That part of this story actually belongs with you. Yes, I know it's very frightening. Yes, I feel it myself. Yes, I see it myself. But the truth is, we actually live in a country where law and order matters, where nobody, fortunately, has lost their lives here because of what's happened there, and where the government is and the authorities are entirely on the side of peace. So please, let's not go around feeling frightened of going out. I know it's difficult to hear, and sometimes given what you're reading on social media, difficult to accept. But as I say to my friends, less time on social media, less time allowing the terrorists to terrorize you will do us all a lot of good. Israel has a right to defend herself, and she is. She must do it in a manner which actually is in compliance with international humanitarian law. That means going out of her way to ensure that people are warned in advance. It means going the extra mile to ask citizens to move because they know there are tunnels under their homes. I read the most extraordinary BBC report. I don't think it was written in a manner which was intended to support the Israeli cause, but you may have seen it as well. It described a dentist in Gaza who was called up by Israel IDF forces and asked to help move people out of the blocks which were going to be hit. They said, don't worry, please get the job done before the bombs would come down. That is what is known as adhering to international humanitarian law, and it's nothing that Hamas, a terrorist organisation, would ever have considered doing. I say the same thing to my opposite number and the Israeli government in public as I say to them in private. It is important they go the extra mile. They are the democracy here. I do feel deeply for the Gazans who are caught up in this mayhem with Hamas, who do not represent the Palestinian people at all. And that's why I'm being proud to send military aid support through humanitarian aid, through military means, to the Rafah crossing in order to help Palestinians. We should all feel for all of those who are caught up in this nightmare, no matter which side of Gaza or Israel they happen to be on. And the same, I have to say, goes for the British Muslim community. who've been caught up in this in much the same way as the Jewish community, experiencing disgusting acts of Islamophobia and much personal abuse, a rise nearly as high as the rise in anti-Semitism. We are the decent people in this government and in this country and in this room, and we should stand against all hatred, no matter where it comes from. So folks, I think it's really important that Israel uphold international humanitarian law. I think it's really important that Britain remains a friend of Israel, helping to guide them through these really difficult times. I think you can all be really proud of the support, £30 million of which has gone to Gaza to try and assist and help people. I think we can also be incredibly proud of the reason that we're in this room, to celebrate and support the work of Youth Aliyah Child Rescue that's been pivotal in providing a home for at-risk children in Israel for decades. You empower the most vulnerable young people in Israel by providing a ladder of opportunity that enables them to climb from a life of poverty, neglect and violence up towards a bright and successful future as contributing members of society. And at a time when the impact of the war has been felt by so many of your children who've come from countries where they've experienced war and persecution, the work you do is more important than ever. You will all help them live happy and fulfilled lives. We cannot put that at further risk. No Israeli or Palestinian should ever again have to go to bed fearing the nightmare that they'll awake to. To Dahlia and your team, for your leadership, and to all of you who are supporting Dahlia this evening, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, and have a lovely day.